Live from the Leimert Park, USA, I'm Tavis Smiley. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to see you and me back in stride again. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you to download our app at KBLA 1580. Download the app. Take us anywhere in the world and listen to us in real time, anywhere in the world, but only by downloading our app right now at KBLA 1580. Should you miss us any day in real time, check out the podcast of this program by going to the app, the website, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, so many places to get the podcast of this program and listen at your leisure should you miss us any day in real time. But I am delighted to have you along live with us today on the day before Election Day. On KBLA Talk 1580. Let me also invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. A great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, is our nation descending into a crisis of overt fascism? Are we teetering on tyranny? Is there still a way out? A conversation with internationally renowned writer and cultural critic Henry Giroux in hour two. In our third hour, a conversation about black men and their vote this election cycle. A huge article in today's New York Times with this headline: "In final push for votes, both parties court black men," close quote. And so I asked today, why do black men in particular say they feel so ignored by politicians? We'll be joined by the organization Black Men Vote and Ted Johnson, senior advisor at New America, about why the votes of black men all of a sudden have become so key in tight races all across America. But in this hour, this first hour today, two conversations. Later in the hour, we'll unpack several major issues on voters' minds and preview tomorrow's elections when we speak with the Washington bureau chief for The Nation magazine, Chris Lehman. But we commence today's broadcast in conversation with a black man who could well be the next brother to claim a seat in the United States Senate, the current Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes. Mandela Barnes, welcome back, sir. How are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me back. Doing real good. It's election day, and we're spending our time getting all across the state talking to people all over the place.
So how are you feeling the day before?
Hey, I feel real good. I'm encouraged by the support we've received so far, and getting out across the state on our RV tours. We've been able to get to every corner of Wisconsin. I can tell you the energy is real, the enthusiasm is real. More people are showing up to these events, these canvas kickoffs, these rallies, than showed up 4 years ago. And we won 4 years ago. So I'm especially encouraged by the outpouring of support, I should say.
Yeah. So President Obama, as we all know, former President Obama was in Wisconsin days ago to campaign with and for you. How did that go? Was that a shot in the arm for the campaign?
Well, it was an incredible response. It was a very engaged crowd. So many people showed up back in my hometown, Milwaukee. It was a very special place to hold the rally because it's where we were 4 years ago. And to come back to that same exact spot, to have President Obama inject so much enthusiasm into not just people who are there, but the folks who got to watch it, people who weren't able to be there. He's still an incredibly popular figure all across Wisconsin, and people respect his drive and the fact that he didn't hold back punches. He was in rare form when he made that speech. He took Ron Johnson to the mat. He took him to task, whether it's on abortion or whether it's on Social Security or just generally leaving people behind. And on the other side of that coin, he had his glowing endorsement of me in my campaign, which I can't even tell you how much that makes me personally.
Yeah. How have you calibrated throughout this campaign how to punch back against Ron Johnson when you're punching back when you're in a fight and you're fighting above your weight? Oftentimes, it's not whether you can throw a punch, as we say around here, but whether you can take a punch. Give me some sense of how you've calibrated pushing back against a very popular Republican figure, wrong, of course, on most issues. But how have you calibrated this race and the way you hit back against Ron Johnson?
Well, that's the dynamic, right? We're talking about a person who is going to say whatever they're trying to divide communities. He's not pushing any policies. He's not pushing any plans. Nothing. But make life harder for people. So with that being said, you got to sort of take into account, what is worth responding to. But the things that are worth going to be also shown is to use Social Security and Medicare. He threatened to compromise the retirement benefits of millions of people across the state and even more across the country. And this is a guy who has sent our good-paying jobs out of Wisconsin. He sent them out of state and overseas. And on top of it all, it's a person who doubled his own wealth while a U.S. senator. Wrote the rules to benefit himself personally. Change the tax code so that you get tax deductions for private plane purchases. As soon as that bill was signed into law, his family turned around and bought 3 private planes. His multi-million-dollar business pays $0 in state income taxes since 2013. And look, for all the things he's done for himself, he hasn't done a single thing to help us. At least throw working people in Trump. He can't even do that.
Yeah. You heard me say a moment ago, and I've got about 4 minutes left with you. I know you're on your cell phone on the campaign trail, but I wanted the national audience to hear your voice the day before Election Day, because, again, tomorrow you could be the other black man sitting alongside Cory Booker and, of course, Tim Scott out of South Carolina, Republican. But there could be 3 black men sitting in the U.S. Senate. We haven't seen that, of course, in our lifetimes. But you heard me say a moment ago when you were on hold waiting to come on, I suspect, about I referenced this article in the New York Times today that's making the point that everybody in the waning hours is trying to address the concerns of black male voters. Republicans, Democrats, black men are key votes in a number of tight races. How are black men responding to you, Mandela Barnes, in Wisconsin?
Well, I'll tell you, if I'm running for office,
yeah.
Yeah,
you're going through a bad area, but try that again.
I was gonna say whether I'm running for office or I'm not running for office, I'm still a black male voter myself. So a lot of this is showing up and having those authentic conversations with people. Because even if show up, I say straight up, look, I'm not running because I think things are going well. I'm running because we need to fix this. We got to fix these problems. And the problem is we've never had an authentic voice who actually knows our experience, people who actually know our struggles firsthand in real time. And because of it, we continue to get behind or left out of the conversation completely. And so this is more than, a campaign for me. This is more than having campaign conversations. This is having actual real talk with people, my friends, my family members, my relatives, my neighbors, people I went to school with, a guy, and people know that I have been there every step of the way. So it's a little bit different for me when I engage in these conversations, because I was there before the campaign started. And then they know I'm going to be there long after the campaign. And they got a whole lot of people that can say the same thing, especially running for U.S. Senate.
Yeah. Speaking of U.S. Senate, and we'll close on this note, I'm getting goosebumps sitting here talking to you, Mandela Barnes, because I've done this a few times in my career. I've been fortunate to be in the game long enough to have talked to people on the front side of making history. Long before the country knew Barack Obama, I knew him. He was working with me in my foundation with young people, helping to develop their leadership potential. He worked with us in that foundation. And so I knew him long before the country got to know him as a U.S. Senator, much less as president. And I recall any number of conversations he and I had publicly and privately before he got elected to the U.S. Senate. So I figure that I'm having that moment all over again, right, at Groundhog Day. So I'm now talking to you on the eve of what could be your historic election tomorrow. So what finally do you have to say to the voters in Wisconsin who are listening to this program, sir?
Hey, to the voters in Wisconsin, we're all fighting for opportunities. We're fighting for that fair shot. And that's the biggest difference between me and Ron Johnson. He's the person who's turned his back on us for 12 years. I would like to talk for the serve as lieutenant governor and even run for the United States. And we are all in this together. We are all going through the same things. We get left behind by self-serving out of such politicians like him. And the women in the state that he told to move, they don't like the laws of the state, like our 1829 criminal abortion ban, to the seniors who work their entire lives and deserve to be able to have some security in their retirement. Ron Johnson's coming after those retirement benefits. He's putting Social Security and Medicare on the chopping block. And for working people like my father and my granddad, who got a ticket to the middle class because of the manufacturing strength of Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, all too happy sitting our good paying jobs out of state and overseas, making life harder for everybody else. He has only been in it for himself. He gets another 6 years, life's going to get harder for us, so it's going to get a whole lot more comfortable for him.
Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes is the first African American to serve as Lieutenant Governor in the state of Wisconsin, and he is the second African American to ever hold statewide office in the state of Wisconsin, and could very well come tomorrow night be the third brother to sit in the United States Senate. As I said a moment ago, I remember having a conversation with Barack Obama before that happened for him, and so hopefully the same good fate, the same good fortune will happen for Mandela Barnes and frankly for the people of Wisconsin, and moreover for black people all across this country. He is one of the best our community has produced, and I wish him all the best in his race tomorrow in Wisconsin. Mandela Barnes, hopefully we'll talk on the other side somewhere down the road, man, but all the best tomorrow. We appreciate you and look forward to a victory.
Absolutely looking forward to it. I appreciate your time.
All right, stay strong, brother. I appreciate you. Again, on the campaign trail in Wisconsin, not the best phone line, but I wanted you to hear the voice of Mandela Barnes, again, the day before what could be a historic election. Can you imagine a brother being elected to the U.S. Senate in the state of Wisconsin, of all places? There are a few African Americans on the ballot tomorrow seeking national office who have decent chances of winning. It's not just Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin. You've got Sherry Beasley in North Carolina, of course, Raphael Warnock in Georgia, in a tough race with Herschel Walker. So a significant number of African Americans all across the country on the eve today of perhaps winning some major national seats in tomorrow's election. We'll talk more about that throughout the course of this 3-hour program today. In our third hour, as I mentioned moments ago, we'll spend the hour talking about this huge story in the New York Times today. Everybody seems to be focusing specifically on the votes of black men. Why have black men's votes become so critical in these key and tight races from California to the Carolinas? We'll talk about that and a great deal more. Just getting started in this 3-hour program today. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Hey, Los Angeles, this is Irvin. Today, our city faces a crisis of violence, homelessness, and soaring rents. And nobody is better equipped to tackle that crisis than my friend Karen Bass. Karen worked in the emergency room, taking care of crime victims, making decisions that were a matter of life and death. She served as Assembly Speaker during the financial meltdown, doing the difficult work needed to rescue our state budget and protect the programs people rely on. As our next mayor, Karen would do what she's always done. When there's no room for error, she'll lead with her smarts and lead with her heart. On November 8th, please join me in supporting Karen Bass for mayor.
Paid for by Karen Bass for Mayor 2022, General. More information at ethics.lacity.org.
Okay, so what is Proposition 30?
Well, it's Lyft who's behind it.
The big ride-sharing corporation?
Mm-hmm. Lyft helped write and pay for Prop 30, $45 million and counting. It's a corporate money grab disguised as a climate initiative.
Oh.
Yep. See, by 2030, the law requires Lyft to use only electric vehicles for 90. I heard Lyft tried but failed to get taxpayers to pay for it.
So now they pay for Prop 30. Say it's about climate change. And if it passes, we end up paying for Lyft's cars?
That's exactly why Governor Newsom, the California NAACP, and the California Teachers Association all say, vote no on Prop 30.
Ugh, we can't afford another corporate money grab.
Let's grab our ballots and vote no on 30.
Ad paid for by No on 30. Educators opposed to corporate handouts sponsored by teachers and school employee organizations. Committee major funding from California Teachers Association and California Federation of Teachers.
Did you know that most of the judges in our courts are former prosecutors and corporate lawyers? This election, you can vote for community lawyers to be your local judges instead. I'm Carolyn G. Park, and I'm running for judge of the Superior Court Office 118 in LA County. I chose a career representing working people and defending civil rights. I believe in accountability and rehabilitation. Vote for change. Vote Park for Judge, seat 118. Paid for by Park for Judge 2022 FPPC 1446510.
Vote Heidi Feldstein Soto for LA City Attorney. Heidi is running to stop corruption at City Hall, to protect neighborhoods from crime and illegal guns. And as the first woman ever elected LA City Attorney, Heidi will stand up for reproductive rights. That's why LA Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood, the LA Sentinel, and the LA Times. Vote Heidi Feldstein Soto for LA City Attorney. Paid for by Heidi Feldstein Soto for City Attorney 2022 General. Info available at ethics.lacity.org.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to have you with us in this hour. We thank Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes for calling in from the campaign trail in Wisconsin. We will see what tomorrow night brings. But again, a number of African Americans on the ballot in some high-profile races all across this country, and we'll be covering that in the next 24, 48 hours or longer if it need be. Something tells me that all across the country, many of these races are not going to be decided tomorrow night. Here in L.A., where this radio station is flagship, tomorrow night I can tell you that every hour starting at 7 p.m. Our polls, of course, don't close to 8 o'clock. There are many great things about living in California. One of the drawbacks is that oftentimes across the country, the national news media starts calling races before our polls even close. That's really a problem on presidential election years when they start calling races and calling states before we've even had a chance to finish voting in California. But such is the nature of living in the Golden State and being 3 hours behind the rest of the nation. But tomorrow night here in Los Angeles, we'll be doing reporting every hour, 7 to midnight, at 35 past the hour. You know how our clock works. We do news, traffic, and sports at the bottom of the hour. And tomorrow night during Zoe Williams' program, The Voice of Reason, during Danny Morrison's program featuring Robin Ayers tomorrow night, on both of those programs at 35 past the hour, we will have the best of our team here updating you politically on all the things you need to know. So at 7:35, 8:35, 9:35, 10:35, 11:35, you'll hear the voices of yours truly, Areva Martin and Dominic DePrima will be updating you from around the city, primarily, I suspect, at Karen Bass headquarters. But we'll be out tomorrow night, again, 35 past the hour, every hour tomorrow night, starting at 7 p.m., we will be giving you updates on the election results as we know them and offering our commentary as well tomorrow night. So you can count on Areva and Dominique and yours truly to offer some updates tomorrow night as you're listening to the program here at KBLA Talk 1580. And again, in the days ahead, we'll continue to cover all these national stories as well. It's going to be busy around here for the next 2 or 3 days, and we want you to stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580. That said, now I'm joined by Chris Lehman, who is the D.C. Bureau Chief for the Nation. Chris, good to have you on the program, sir. How are you today?
Thank you, Tavis. Really great to be here. It sounds like we all have a long week ahead of us.
We do have a long week ahead of us, and you sound like you're underwater, and it's going to be too long for us to sound that way. So tell me how we're trying to fix that sound. But tell me, Chris, how you're feeling on the eve of this big election tomorrow.
I'm feeling apprehensive, I think is the best single word. I think, there is a shot that the Democrats can retain control of the Senate. I don't think the House is seriously in play. The existing margin is too narrow. I think you can hope for Republicans taking control of the House with a narrow margin, and that could mean that parts of the Democratic caucus can become more influential.
Hey, Chris, let me cut it. Your phone. Let Miles pick up and talk to you. Your phone line sounds horrible, and it's just my fate, just my luck that at the first hour of our program, I get two brilliant voices, two persons whose opinions you need to hear, and they both have horrible phone lines. So we're going to try to readdress that. We'll try it again. Chris, are you still there?
Yeah, I am. Is this better?
That sounds a lot better. You sound like you're underwater.
Okay, sorry about that.
That wasn't working for you. Okay, let's start this. Let's do this all over again. Hey, Chris, I'm Tavis. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm well, thank you. So, how are you feeling on the eve of tomorrow's big election day, sir?
I think the main word I would use is apprehensive. I feel like there is a chance that the Democrats can retain control of the Senate, which will be huge, given that I don't think the House is seriously in play. The margin of existing control in the House is too narrow, and in midterms historically, the party in control of the White House always loses seats. So there is a scenario where the House goes to Republican control by a narrow margin, and that could elements of the Democratic caucus in play to play a bigger role. Mm-hmm. But I think we have to focus on the Senate. Is my short answer. Yep. Obviously, I could give you a much longer one.
No, we've got time, and I'll take your longer answer in a second here. Let me start with this though. Some months ago, the speculation was that Democrats would take a shellacking, a walloping in these House races.
Yeah,
and they'd have a 40, 50, 60 vote deficit in the House. It doesn't matter whether it's one. On the one hand, it does. It doesn't. The margin can be significant, or the margin can be slim. Either way, you're not in control. Of course, in the Senate, where it's 50-50, we see all kind of machinations because of that even split. But how bad do you think it's going to be in the House? Not again that it makes much of a difference, but how bad it's going to be, you think?
I got out of the prediction business in 2016, so I'm not going to confidently say anything. But I do think the shellacking scenario that you referenced is no longer a prospect. I think, reaction to the Dobbs decision and, genuine concern about the fate of American democracy have boosted turnout. And I think late polls indicate that, Democrats are, basically have bridged the enthusiasm gap. I think if there were another week to this election cycle, you could have a very different outcome. But, if you're going to force me to guess, I would say a loss in the 20 to 30 seat range for the Democrats in the House. But again, that is purely guess. Polls, as we've learned the last several cycles, are really dicey and not really reliable measures of turnout. So we'll know.
Sense of what the divide will be in the Senate if Democrats can win back the Senate. What's your sense of what that divide looks like?
Best case scenario is we come out with what we have now, a 50-50 split. There are scenarios, Mandela Barnes, who you just had on, if he's able to close the gap, Warnock in Georgia, I think that is probably headed toward a runoff. I don't see any other outcome there. But, the problem is there are previously seats that the Democrats were fairly confident about keeping in New Hampshire and Nevada that are now in play and not looking good. Yeah. So, it's really, I hate to say this because I hate being anxious myself, and I know your listeners must feel the same way, but it's really a toss-up at this juncture in the Senate.
Yeah. The race in Georgia you referenced a moment ago, I should explain to the audience right quick for those who are following or somewhat following this race between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, these two black men going at it. As I said earlier, we'll talk in the third hour today about why the votes of black men are so critical in key races across the country. Yeah. A big story, huge story in the New York Times today and elsewhere. Everybody's been talking about it, as you well know, Chris. Yep. But in that race, the reason why Chris is saying that it may go to a runoff is because there's a third-party candidate in that race. And it's likely that neither Raphael Warnock nor Herschel Walker will win that 50+1% they need, 51% they need in the state of Georgia to claim victory outright tomorrow night. So then we go to a runoff in December. So it's very likely, as Chris intimated a moment ago, that even after tomorrow night, in the days ahead, we may not know who is literally in control of the Senate. If this thing ends up going to a runoff in December, we'll see. One of the things that the Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker race brings up is the issue of race, and all across the country, as we see in the Supreme Court. We've been talking about the Supreme Court, and 4 or 5 of the major cases that everybody's watching in this term have race written all over them. And in this campaign across the nation, these campaigns across the nation tomorrow, race is on the ballot. In so many of these races, no place is on the ballot more than an issue in the state of Georgia. And there's a commercial that is running across the country that you may not have heard, but it is shocking. I warn you right now, it is shocking to hear. Let me play this commercial for you, which shows you once again how race is on the ballot all across the nation. And when we come forward after news and traffic and sports, we'll get Chris Lehman's take on this, and I'll share my thoughts as well. Listen to the spot, and after that, we'll go to news, traffic, and sports and come back with more on KBLA Talk 1580.
When did racism against white people become okay? Joe Biden put white people last in line for COVID relief funds. Kamala Harris said disaster aid should go to non-white citizens first. Liberal politicians block access to medicine based on skin color. progressive corporations, airlines, universities, all openly discriminate against white Americans. Racism is always wrong. The left's we are all entitled to equal treatment under law. America First Legal paid for this ad.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. NBA Brooklyn Nets star African-American Kyrie Irving reportedly must complete a series of tests before he's able to play again following his support of an anti-Semitic film. The Athletic now reporting Irving must issue an apology for posting a link to the movie and make it clear he doesn't have any anti-Jewish beliefs. The Nets recently suspended Irving for what the team says was a deeply disturbing failure to disavow anti-Semitism following his promotion of an anti-Semitic film on social media. And now I'll look back at history. On this date in 1989, L. Douglas Wilder became the first elected black governor in U.S. history after winning the gubernatorial race in Virginia. In New York, David Dinkins was elected New York City's first black mayor. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
A Highland Park crash is blocking the 2 left lanes of the 110 southbound at Bridewell Street. Traffic is stopped from Fair Oaks Avenue with about a 15-minute delay, and Santa Clarita in the carpool lane at Placerita Canyon Road with traffic stopped from Sand Canyon Road and a 36-minute delay. In Boyle Heights, a crash in the middle lanes of the 60 westbound at the 101. Traffic is slow and go from the 710 with a 15-minute delay.
In these inflationary times, you need a good value, especially when it comes to fuel. Lava Propane gives you 2 extra pounds more than other companies who short fill. You get more gas for the same cash. With the holidays coming, it's time to check propane tank levels. Visit lavapropane.com for value and location.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
More agony for the Rams. They had a 4-point lead at Tampa Bay with 44 seconds left in the game and couldn't hold it. Tom Brady threw a 1-yard touchdown pass with 9 seconds left to pull out a 16-13 win. The Rams are 3-5. They have been outscored in the fourth quarter this season, 71-10. The Chargers got a 37-yard field goal from Cameron Dicker as time ran out to clinch a 20-17 win in Atlanta. The Chargers are now 5-3. The Lakers are 2-7 after a home loss to Cleveland. The Clippers also lost at home yesterday. They lose by 8 to Utah. Undefeated Jackson State remains at number 5 in this week's Division I AA poll. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we'll claim wins or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call me your MVP.
Are you tired of feeling like the legal system is unfair to certain communities? I know I am. I'm Elizabeth Lashley Haynes, and that's why I'm running for judge. I want to bring fairness and equality to the judicial bench in LA County.
Vote for my wife. She won't stand for injustice in our home or in the courtroom.
November 8th, vote Lashley Haynes for judge, seat 67, and vote justice for all.
Paid for by Lashley Haynes for Judge 2022.
Power to the people. Say their names. Voter suppression takes many forms. Say their names. When you vote on or by November 8th, say their names, because they can't. Vote on or by November 8th. What's your excuse? Paid for by the African American Voter Registration, Education, and Participation Project.
This is Congresswoman Maxine Waters. If you like, you may. Tuesday, November 8th is Election Day. I'm running for re-election to the 43rd District, and as chairwoman of the Financial Services Committee of the House of Representatives, I'm fighting against inflation, and I will never give up on fighting for affordable housing, for the elimination of homelessness, organized labor, good-paying jobs, education for our children, veterans, Social Security for our seniors, and student loan forgiveness. Well, we must add to that safety and security for our communities and police reform. I will never back down on improving the quality of life for everyone. I will not be stopped, and I will always declare, on behalf of my constituents, I'm reclaiming my time. Don't forget to vote Tuesday, November 8th. This is Auntie Maxine, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Citizens for Water.
This Sunday and every Sunday is the African Marketplace and Drum Circle Community Market. Get free groceries, essential resources, and buy black from local merchants of arts, beauty, custom black merchandise, and more. Choose from a wide variety of cuisines, custom-made clothing, jewelry, and a lot more. Experience the true essence of Africatown at Lamert Park every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Join the Drum Circle, dance, enjoy live performances, connect with other conscious black people. Experience black excellence every Sunday in Africa. Find us on Degnan Boulevard near Vernon and Crenshaw in the heart of Africatown at Lamert Park. That's the African Marketplace and Drum Circle Community Market. Join us for music, shopping, food, and fun this and every Sunday. Support black businesses, recycle black dollars, and feed your soul. The African Marketplace and Drum Circle Community Market every Sunday in Africatown at Lamert Park. Brought to you by Africatown Enterprise and the African Village Vendors Association.
Broadcasting live from Lamert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio, KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley, glad to have you with us on this Election Day Eve. Our guest in this hour is the D.C. Bureau Chief for one of our favorite publications, The Nation magazine. His name is Chris Lehman. In case you just tuned in, we before News, Traffic, and Sports played this commercial that got my attention. It's being run all across the country by an organization called America First Legal. Let me read very quickly who they say they are. You can look it up yourself. American First Legal is the long-awaited answer to the ACLU. We are committed to an unwavering defense of true equality under law, national borders, and sovereignty, freedom of speech and religion, classical values and virtues, the sanctity of life and centrality of family, and our timeless legal and constitutional heritage. Through relentless litigation and oversight, we will protect America first, last, and always, close quote. That's a statement from their president, some guy named Stephen Miller, president of America First Legal. That's who they say they are. This is the commercial they're running across the country.
When did racism against white people become okay? Joe Biden put white people last in line for COVID relief funds. Kamala Harris said disaster aid should go to non-white citizens first. Liberal politicians block access to medicine based on skin color. Progressive corporations, airlines, universities all openly discriminate against white Americans. Racism is always wrong. The left's anti-white bigotry must stop. We are all entitled to equal treatment under law. America First Legal paid for this ad.
Chris Lehman, when you hear an ad like that on the eve of an election like this, where race is central in so many of these races, how do you process that, sir?
Well, after cursing a lot, I think back to the Willie Horton, another disgraceful racist ad that ran in the home stretch of the 1988 election, or Jesse Helms' Hands ad, an anti-affirmative action spot. This is a very old playbook on the right. The only novelty is Steve Miller, the guy you mentioned, is a former policy advisor to Donald Trump, was the engineer of the family separation policy at the border. He represents the new wave of white nationalism that's overtaken the Republican Party. So they know that this is a tactic, based on those past performances that gets at the hard right votes. It uses racial fear. It uses explicit racist, the one you just heard, to play into the hands of white grievance politics, the myth of white victimization, everything that has sent our democracy on a collision course ever since Donald Trump's election. And it's a reminder, the Democrats have been saying in the home stretch that democracy is on the ballot this cycle. And the thing I would add to that is there is no space between the battle to save our democracy and the battle for racial justice. They are one and the same. And this ad, I hope, will focus the attention of progressive voters of goodwill to come out and defeat this hateful ideology.
Yeah. To your point, you used the key words, Chris, that got my attention, explicit. explicit racial appeal, as you said. I think about, as you mentioned, the Willie Horton ad. For those who've been around for a while, the Jesse Helms ad. There are others, of course. So this is, to your point, not a new strategy on the right. And yet, in my lifetime, it's never been more so much more explicit. I mean, in the past, these things have had a certain subtlety to them, but this ad, the language, what they're saying, the way they're laying it out, is so explicit. What do you make of the fact that the appeal again is so in your face?
Well, it used to be racist appeals on the right used to be called dog whistles.
Right, exactly.
They're heard outside the frequency of mainstream discourse. The people who are keyed into those ugly themes responded. Today's American right feels no obligation to have a dog whistle. It's a siren. It is a flat out appeal to this sort of insidious birthright politics of white America that believes that they have some entitlement that is always at risk of being taken away from non-white communities. So sadly, with Trump's election, that appeal worked in many ways, and people like Shannon and Steve Miller were at the forefront of that strategy. So it is very alarming that Steve Miller has this super PAC that can flood the airwaves with this kind of garbage and hate. And I'm just hopeful that voters will recognize it for what it is. It is, appealing to all the worst elements of, the American tradition. And there should be no place in a functioning democracy for those kind of appeals.
You've been writing, I've been reading your stuff as I always do in The Nation. You've been writing about political violence, the rise of political violence in our society. And I wonder if in your mind, Chris Laban, there's a line to be drawn between the white grievance politics that you referenced a moment ago and the increasing outburst, if you will, of political violence in this country.
Oh, yeah. No, they are. And again, that is a long tradition in our past. Sorry, I have a dog barking in the background here.
Speaking of dog whistles, you got a dog in the background.
Exactly. It has always been the case that voter suppression has been racialized, that it was enforced by violence in the Jim Crow South. And violence is now very much. We saw on January 6th, we saw a Confederate flag on the floor of the U.S. Capitol. We saw nooses erected on the Capitol grounds. That is very explicit racialized violence that goes very far back in the history of this country. And you saw with the attack on Paul Pelosi by this QAnon adherents, there is this ready ideology on the right that has to do with election denialism, that has to do with QAnon, which is an apocalyptic eliminationist cult. It is a belief that the enemies of the right-wing white nationalist faction will be killed in an apocalyptic confrontation. So it is another thing that has long driven our politics, but is now reasserting itself in what is to me a really terrifying new guise.
You mentioned election denialism. I read this in The Nation. There are over 300 Republicans on the ballot in states from California to the Carolinas who are in fact election deniers. Over 300 Republicans on the ballot in states all across the country who are themselves election deniers. Let's assume that those persons win, or a good number of those persons win. How much worse does this problem get when we're now electing people? I mean, people are literally running for. It's one thing to be in office, to have been, to be a sitting congressperson or sitting office holder, and to deny what happened on January the 6th. It's quite another thing to be running for office, and you're telling us up front that you don't believe that Joe Biden won the last election. How much better? How much worse, rather? Do things get before they get better if we elect a significant number of these 300 plus election deniers on the ballot tomorrow?
That is a great point, Tavis, and it's another indication of why democracy really is literally on the ballot this cycle. Because, look, the run-up, what provoked the January 6th attack was, series of lies that the Trump campaign tried to promulgate about the election being stolen and targeting very specific swing states like Georgia, which we talked about earlier, Michigan, Wisconsin, to, get the officials overseeing the election to return the will of the people in those states. The system narrowly held that time, but if you have people, there's an election denialist running for Attorney General in Nevada and in Arizona, and all it would take in another, close election is for those people to, say, I'm not going to certify for the Democratic winner. And then you have a crisis for which January 6th was just an overture. We also mentioned the Supreme Court earlier. One of the cases they're going to be hearing has to do with this bogus theory of the independent legislature, which basically, says states can decide elections however they want. If the court decides in favor of that, and there is, it's narrower than you would like it to be for something that is just so outlandishly anti-democratic and anti-constitutional. We have a whole new playing field for our democracy, and it's if you staff and governorships as well, Kerry Lake in Arizona again is running on the big lie, and if you have a unified front of governor and attorney general who are election denialists, democracy literally ceases to function.
Yep. As Chris has said a couple times in this conversation, and he's echoing what others have said, that democracy really is on the ballot tomorrow. When we come forward, speaking of democracy, we'll talk about the two big names, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. There's a great question, I think, to delve into about how whatever we expect tomorrow will impact the rest of the term of Joe Biden, say nothing whether or not tomorrow's results impact his decision about whether to run for re-election. And we are told over the weekend it's just a matter of hours, days, before Donald Trump is set to make his announcement that he is going to run for re-election. That news story, as I'm sure you heard, broke over the weekend, that we are standing by, as it were, waiting on Donald Trump to announce that he is running for not re-election. I guess it would be re-election, depending on how one defines that. But running for the presidency again. A great deal more to talk to Chris Lehman about from The Nation magazine when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where truth prevails. The tricky station is down the dial.
Vote Heidi Feldstein Soto for LA City Attorney. Heidi is running to stop corruption at City Hall, crime and illegal guns. And as the first woman ever elected LA City Attorney, Heidi will stand up for reproductive rights. That's why Heidi is the only candidate endorsed by the LA Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood, the LA Sentinel, and the LA Times. Vote Heidi Feldstein Soto for LA City Attorney. Paid for by Heidi Feldstein Soto for City Attorney 2022 General. Info available at ethics.lacity.org.
Hi, I'm Sedarius Blaine, actor from the Jumanji movies, The Big Leap on Fox, Charmed, and more. I started an all-inclusive luxury travel club called Top Shelf Getaways that's now visited 14 countries in the last 2 years and counting. Now, we're rolling out our local staycations so you can experience the excitement and spirit of adventure that we're known for right here in Southern California. Starting November 11th, come join us for a celebration of excellence as we honor some of Hollywood's biggest legends at the W Hotel in Hollywood, California. Our staycation will feature live performers, singers, magicians, mixologists, and private chef, as well as a private screening of Black Panther Wakanda Forever at the world-famous TCL Chinese Theater and an after-party. Transportation from the hotel and overnight stay at the W are included. November 12th will be our bottomless brunch pool party sponsored by El Cristiano Tequila. All of this for only $500 per person, $800 per couple, or select the locals rate to indulge in Friday night only. Follow us on Instagram or visit TopShelfGetaways.com to secure your tickets today. We can't wait to see you.
I plan to make history by being one of the first public defenders ever elected in LA County history. I share your values, and I hope to earn your support in November. My name is Anna Slocky Raycano, and I'm running for Judge of the Superior Court, Office Number 60. This ad is paid for by Raycano for Judge 2022, FPPC number 144466.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
Chris Lehman, we are told this morning that it looks like November 14th. I've not seen that confirmed anywhere as yet, but we are told from a couple of news sources this morning that November 14th, which would be, I guess, a week from yesterday. Get my math right. A week from today, Donald Trump is going to announce he's running once again for the White House. How do you read that? I don't know what else to ask. How do you read that, Chris?
Wearily, I would say. And in one sense, it feels like he's never stopped running. He's still doing, these rallies, blanketing the media with, his lies and racist garbage. But yeah, I mean, it will be a big challenge for my profession, first of all, to not make the same mistakes the media made in 2016 and just treat him as this, the big story constantly and give him wall-to-wall coverage that worked out into an in-kind donation to his campaign during the primary. To really highlight the issues we've been talking about, that this is a man who is committed to overthrow American democracy. There is really no other way to describe Trumpism. It is an ideology of an authoritarian leader. Yeah, it will be another stress test for our democracy, and we haven't been doing well meeting those.
This is an amorphous question, I admit, but let me ask anyway. Because it just rubs me raw. It sticks in my craw. It has for some years now. And that is the point you raised a moment ago, that the media, the mainstream media, corporate media, was absolutely complicit in the election, the ascension of Donald Trump. And I'm just wondering whether or not, to your mind, you think they'll ever admit that.
No. I mean, self-interest is a law of human nature, right? And I think, the media also cleaves to a really what is now an outmoded model of how our politics works. They think that, whatever, the fever will break somehow on the right and reemerge as a guiding force. None of that is going to happen from my reading of things. And, yeah, I think the, primary responsibility of journalists and everywhere, but especially in a democratic social order, is to tell the truth and to tell the truth about what are real and urgent threats to our democracy. So, yeah, I feel like, in some ways they've gotten better. They have used the word lie, which they didn't used to in covering Trump. And they have not been great on racial issues. I think they tend to, and it's something that the right exploits very explicitly. They tend to shy away from calling things by their true names, and that is the kind of environment in which bad actors like Steve Miller and Steve Bannon and Donald Trump thrive. They can play the kind of witless, both sides instincts of the media to their advantage over and over again. In
our remaining moments, thoughts on how the results of tomorrow will impact the remainder of this term of President Joe Biden. You're listening to Chris Lehman on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
On November 8th, voters can pick their community judge. Hello, my name is Holly Hancock, a deputy public defender. For 16 years, I have stood with individuals fighting for their constitutional rights in court. I am qualified to be your community judge because background determines future behavior, and compassion is always justified. Vote Holly Hancock in seat 70. Diversity matters. Paid for by Holly Hancock for Judge 2022.
When it comes to LA's next mayor, who can we trust to stand up for our community? The person who's always been there, Democrat Karen Bass. Unlike her opponent, Karen Bass has always been a Democrat, fighting for principles like fairness, justice, and equal rights. She's not a billionaire real estate developer who only comes around during election time. Karen Bass has never left our side or forgotten where she came from. Take it from someone who knows.
This is Stevie Wonder. And you know what? Today, Los Angeles needs real principled leadership. We need someone who is who they say they are, with or without a hot microphone. We need someone who has been consistent with who they are in principle, party affiliation, and government service. No surprises with Karen Bass. She is who she's always been, a real honest leader. Vote Karen Bass.
Paid for by Karen Bass for Mayor 2022 General. More information at ethics.lacity.org.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. Together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Chris Lehman, I am no better prognosticator than you are, and you're probably better than I am because you cover this stuff every single day. None of us has a crystal ball, but it would appear that we are likely to have a divided government come Wednesday morning. How does that reality, should that be the reality, how does that impact the presidency of Joe Biden these next couple of years?
Well, for one thing, you're going to see a real cavalcade in the House of, efforts to impeach Biden, efforts to have subcommittees going into the large, the kind of non-scandal of Hunter Biden, of all kinds of things on the right-wing fantasy wish list will be moved to, the topic A in Congress. And I think, there will be, as a result, just a tremendous waste of energy and resources defending against these things. And I guess, Joe Biden will have to do a fair number, which is increasingly what divided government breeds. He's spent the early part of his tenure overturning a lot of horrible Trump executive orders. So I guess there will be, one can hope, some progress gained on that front. What's regrettable, of course, I do think Congress did perform above expectations, given the narrow margins and the difficulties with Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema, to get things like the Inflation Reduction Act through and infrastructure and other, important items. They did not move on voting rights, which is one of the things we've been talking about. And that's, I think, going to be a real loss that will haunt everyone in coming elections, and the effort to get real justice and equality
I think you're right about what you said. I think we can expect also a great deal a great number of investigations, a lot more investigations we're going to be seeing coming from these committees. In the 60 seconds I have left, how long after midterms do you think the pressure builds on the president to announce what he intends to do in 2024?
I don't really want to speculate, but I think it is important for Democrats to get organized in the wake of a loss and to have a long-term strategy. Hope that the people, in the inner circle around Biden and leading the party can produce, especially in the wake of the Trump announcement, something.
Yeah. we'll leave it at that. Something. Chris Lehman, Chris Laban is the Washington, D.C. bureau chief for The Nation magazine. Chris, good to have you on. And again, none of us has a crystal ball, but we will see what happens tomorrow. And I'm sure in the coming days and weeks, we'll be talking to you once again. Thank you for your time, sir. All the best to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tavis, and same to you.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. In the next hour of this program, we're doing politics all 3 hours today. Surprise, surprise, the day before Election Day. Is our nation descending into a crisis of overt fascism? Are we teetering on tyranny? Is there a way out? A great guest in hour 2. And then in our third hour today, we'll talk about why the votes of black men are the votes to have these days, particularly in tight races all across the nation. I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward after news, traffic, and sports.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.